Tonight on Epidemiology 306, we'll be discussing the implications of pre-pregnancy obesity and how it affects adverse fetal and infant outcomes. In 2013, a group of scientists from the Center of Disease Control did a study to examine just how much obesity in pregnant women affected their unborn babies. Here to tell us about it is lead scientist Dr. Margaret A. Honein. Dr. Honein, why did you want to research this topic?
Hello, Carly. Well, we did this study because approximately 1/3 of U.S. reproductive women are obese. And pre-pregnancy obesity is a strong risk factor for adverse fetal and infant outcomes. The CDC wanted to know the number of preventable adverse fetal and infant outcomes associated with pre-pregnancy obesity. The number of pre-pregnancy obesity has increased over the years. Self-reported obesity has increased from 13 to 22%, according to data from the Pre-Pregnancy Assessment Monitoring System, PRAMS. This is just a self-reporting. According to the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, obesity has increased from 28% in 2007 to 34% in 2010, and those are clinical findings. Women with a BMI of over 30 are considered obese. Knowing the obesity is so high and the pre-pregnancy obesity that causes major birth defects and fetal deaths, which has been recognized in multiple epidemiological studies. Here at the CDC, we are all about preventing disease. So by reducing pre-pregnancy obesity, would that have a measurable impact on the annual number of adverse fetal and infant outcomes? We also know that major birth defects can result in lifelong disability and premature mortality. This has been highlighted in many studies done by us at the CDC in 2008. And then along with the infant mortality statistics in 2010. Fetal and perinatal mortality in US 2009 also reported this. Birth defects are underlying cause of 1 in 5 deaths within the first year of life.
So was this the study's hypothesis?
Yes, that is our hypothesis. Our hypothesis under investigation is how many adverse and fetal outcomes associated with pre-pregnancy obesity could be prevented.
How did you go about finding this number? What major techniques did you use in your study?
That's a very good question. To figure out the type of adverse fetal and infant outcomes that are statistically significant to pre-pregnancy obesity, we analyzed peer-reviewed meta-analyses, which included fetal deaths and 9 different major birth defects. To find the true number of pre-pregnancy obesity, we used self-reporting number, multiplied it by a bias factor, and then added the clinically measured number. Now, to discover the number of adverse fetal outcomes that we could prevent, we used a Monte Carlo simulation approach. This model used attributable, a fraction, and the preventable number. This model also took under certain situations into account, such as the strength of association of obesity, obesity prevalence, and outcome prevalence. So through this research, we discovered by eliminating pre-pregnancy obesity, that would potentially prevent 6,990 fetal deaths, 2,850 congenital heart defects, 490 hydrocephalosis, and 405 spinal bifida. Our end result is that if 10% of women who have a BMI over 30 would achieve a healthier weight before becoming pregnant, 300 congenital heart defects and 700 fetal deaths could be potentially prevented.
So these results prove your hypothesis to be true, right?
Yes, anything could potentially be prevented, but to see these numbers proves our hypothesis to be true. The fact that preventing these adverse fetal and infant outcomes can be achieved with future research and public education, now we have numbers to back up the theory of importance of maintaining a healthy weight, especially if you're thinking of becoming pregnant. Do you see any further research coming from this? Yes, like I said, we have numbers to back up our theory. So the CDC can now implement research on ways to decrease weight in women in their childbearing years. Further research should be done on larger populations and compare it to other countries worldwide. Research also should be done on an economical standpoint. If these adverse and fetal outcomes are prevented, how much financial savings would the government and these families be able to save? We need to think, how would that affect our hospitals, families, and governments in a financial way? Well, how exciting! Thank you, Dr. Honein, for joining us today. I know we all look forward to the future research. It was my pleasure. Thank you, Carly. Epidemiology 306 decided to present this information to you today because we realize the importance of preventing disease, especially in those who are unborn. And the prevalence of obesity in the U.S. population today is an epidemic and must be slowed down. Any research that gives women an excuse to obtain a healthier lifestyle should be researched and presented. And if that excuse is to prevent fetal and infant harm. That is it for us today here at Epidemiology 306. But before we go, you may want to know why we wanted to present this research to you. The research being done by Dr. Honein and the team at CDC is very interesting and informative. The care of mothers and newborns is very important to us. The article that was presented was clearly written, easily understood, and very informative. The article presented straight to the point facts that are easily applicable to today's society. The topic was also very relevant to other research studies that we are investigating, relating to the care of newborns and mothers at OB 306. I'm Carrlee McGuire, and that's it for here at Epidemiology 306. Take care, America. I hope you enjoyed the different way that I presented this article. The modeling of potential public health impact on pregnancy, pre-pregnancy obesity, and adverse fetal and infant outcomes by Margaret A. Honein, Owen Devine, Andrea Sharma, Sandra Rasmussen, Sohan Park, James Kucik, Colleen Boyle from the Journal of Obesity, Epidemiology, and Genetics. I will now present my peer review. As you just heard, this article wanted to discover if reducing pre-pregnancy obesity in women could prevent adverse fetal and infant outcomes. By using other studies' statistical results and formulating a simulation where the pregnant female's weight was reduced, they could discover the number of preventable fetal deaths and preventable major birth defects. This research study did in fact find a significant number of preventable adverse outcomes. The simulation suggested that reducing pre-pregnancy obesity could have a measurable impact on infant health in the U.S. This article had two strengths. The first strength of this article is that it took into consideration multiple uncertainties, such as strength of association with obesity, obesity prevalence, and the outcome prevalence. This allows the results to be truer since variables associated with obesity were taken into account. The second strength was a reduction in variables by focusing on only one population, that population being obese pregnant women. But this was also its weakness. The study did not take into consideration the overweight population according to BMI. The impact of weight loss and pregnancy can be extended to obese population and overweight. The results of this article have public health implications because obesity is such a prevalent condition and affects everyone in some way. Preventing adverse fetal and infant outcomes is a public health issue. Now the results of this research can be used by the CDC and other organizations to increase public awareness and education. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and now here are my references.